Daniel.
All right, Candace, nice to meet you.
Daniel, nice to meet
What
you.
are you
Daniel, nice to meet you.
Dan?
Nice to meet you. Good. Nice to meet you, Ken.
Like to see you.
Okay, Team Lima, you will have 20 minutes to present your solution to the judges. You will be given a warning when 5 and 2 minutes remain. After 20 minutes, the presentation will be stopped immediately. No information will be considered after the 20 minutes has lapsed. Following your presentation, there will be a 10-minute question and answer. You will be given a warning when 2 minutes remain. The question and answer will be stopped when the 10 minutes are over, and you may begin whenever you are ready.
All right. So the cost of implementing an intelligent automation system is $6 million. The average major fraud case cost is $10 million. The global fraud cost in 2012 was $11.3 billion. The price of implementing a fraud system that works best for your customers efficiently is priceless. Here at Lima Leaders, we want your company and your customers to feel secured when they're accessing their mobile fraud payments. And we're going to do this through an intelligence automation system that will create an efficient process so your company can focus on what you do best, being a global payments leader. So today we're going to talk about the 4 types of automation. We're going to go through it, and we're going to talk about specifically our intelligence automation, and we're going to analyze this through the payments value chain. And we're going to create a set of recommendations, which we're ultimately going to choose our final recommendation of creating a mobile assistant for the Mastercard app. And then with any automation any automation system would raise ethical and financial implications. So we're going to talk about that as well. And then since Mastercard operates in over 210 different countries, we're going to look at it from a global perspective. And now Katrina's going to talk about our 4 types of automation.
Thank you, Daniel. So, for this presentation, we looked at 4 different types of automation for your company. And we'll start off here with traditional information technology automation. This is very basic for data science with regards to software applications. This is the least specific of the 4 types of automation that we looked at. Next, moving into robotic process automation. This robotic process automation has to do with creating specific, replicable, and structured interactions using these different bots. And so with this, you are able to create processes that will happen over and over and over again, which is something that can be very useful. Taking that step further, we looked at our intelligence automation. And so this combines all the RPA processes, but also brings in machine learning. With machine learning, every single step that this process is taking what it previously has experienced and then building off of that as well. So now it's creating a larger data bank to pull from. And then lastly, we looked at the most specific or fit-for-purpose automation. And so this is one solution for one problem. And this we thought was the most specific, yes, but quite costly. The graphic that you'll see on the screen now is an evaluation of all 4 of these types of automation against our 6 key success factors that we thought were the most important for your company. So starting off with employee engagement, possibility for other value creation activities, speed to market, replicated accuracy benefits, utilizing current staff and technology, as well as overall security. What we want to emphasize is that we are building off of what you currently have within your company. So security in this regard, every single aspect of this automation system will just build on top of what you presently have. I specifically want to focus on intelligent automation, as we thought this was the best opportunity for your company. We recognize that employee engagement would be a little bit minimal compared to that of a traditional IT automation, as the process would be learning independently on its own rather than being dependent on your employees. However, due to the possibility of the other categories, we thought this was extremely beneficial. And so, while this automation can be focused on solving the day-to-day customer problems that occur or anything else, there can be other focuses on the development of other areas within your company. So that's the possibility for other value creation activities. Speed to market wise, we thought that comparing this specifically to fit to purpose automation, fit to purpose is a very in-depth process and would take an extensive period of time. While we thought that these were equivalent in their usefulness, we thought that it would be faster to have the intelligence automation develop that software first, as it would be able to learn on its own. And so that would be a faster speed to market. And then replicated accuracy benefits, it should be noted that everything above the robotic process automation includes all of the same steps. These is simply add in the AI or artificial intelligence aspect. And then utilizing our current staff and technology, we want to assist your employees with how they run their different processes from day to day. And so through this machine learning aspect, they will be able to build on what is already present. So this is also built off of your mission of we want to create a world beyond cash where every person, every payment, and every device is protected. And so we hope that through intelligent automation, we're again supporting what you presently have and extending that into the future. So we looked at the payments value chain in order to analyze this further. Your merchants, we will discuss most of their processes when we discuss tokenization a little bit later. What I want to emphasize in this aspect is risk management processing and schemes overall. So risk management has to do with security, and so we want to mitigate the security that is going on and mitigate fraud causes overall. And so by using intelligent automation where you can build upon processes that have previously existed, now you can create these replicated aspects where if a problem has occurred previously, now that can be solved in the same way, or it could be developed upon if an anomaly occurs in that regard. Processing, we want to create processing that is faster, but also easier access for your company as well as on the consumer end. And so we'll discuss a little bit later about an assistant that will help out with that process overall. And then with schemes overall, we want to create that switching the transaction process to be faster, easier, and just more beneficial overall. Okay. And with all this being said, I'd like to hand it off to my colleague Elena to discuss a little bit more about our recommendations.
So just to backtrack a little bit, this is a graphic about the amount lost to fraud on major global cards. So it's 6 cents to $100, but with Mastercard it's 5 cents to $100. So there's definitely some cost savings in there as well. So let's go into some of the current assets and the current modules that you guys currently have. So facial recognition, this is something that we're very familiar with, as well as thumbprint recognition. What this does is helps identify that you're in fact the one that's purchasing this product, and it adds an extra layer of security. Secure code screen is for customers purchasing maybe in a retail store. They would have to identify their personal, kind of like a personal identification number to the issuer. The issuer will confirm this and then authorize the transaction. So this is an added layer of security. CSID is the identification fraud alert. So what this application does is it scours through the internet and sees if any of your information is being bought or sold, and it will alert you if it detects any of that. EMV is something that we're all familiar with, especially when 2015 when this first came out. This is the chip in your cards. This is one of the best ways to allow for safer transactions, and it's actually noted that since its adoption in 2015, it has reduced identity theft by 60 to 80%. So we want to take this a step further and go into some of our recommendations to increase security. One is voice recognition. This is pretty self-explanatory. We can kind of see that this is what technology is going towards. This will be kind of explained within our mobile assistant a little bit later, so I'm going to go into that later. Next is cardiac rhythm recognition. So this is where they look at your cardiac rhythm through a smartwatch, such as my Apple Watch right here, and they can identify this is you who's making the purchase as well. So these two are actually things that we found within the Mastercard's plans for the future years. So these are things that are currently in the works, but we want to make sure that this is solidified in your future plans. Lastly, this is tokenization. I'm just going to go a little bit further and talk about tokenization. So this is something that Mastercard currently does, and we think it's amazing, and we want all merchants to adopt this system as well. What it essentially is the chip on your card, except in an online format. So what it is when a customer makes a purchase and it is authorized, that authorization and payment details is not exactly shown to the merchant. For example, the card number will get encrypted so that it's put in a form such as a token. And that token is read by the merchants. They don't get the sensitive information such as the card details of the customer. This is incredible, and we really, really want this to be adopted across all merchants because it helps secure and safer transactions, and it also gives the customer a peace of mind that their information is secure. So another recommendation we have is our mobile assistant, Meet Mia. Mia is our Mastercard intelligence assistant that we will implement within an app that currently exists. So there's an app right now called Mastercard for You, and we want to implement Mia within that app. So in here, and the next slide is a user interface that I designed myself just to show you exactly how Mia would look within your application. So this is currently the home screen of the Mastercard for You application. Clicking Ask Mia brings you to the Mia module. Within the Mia module, you can type or ask for anything with your voice. And for an example, we have Harry. Harry asks Mia, what is Mastercard's secure code? Mia can answer this question because this question is within her scope and her knowledge. So she can answer it directly, and she also has in-app functionality where she can perform functions such as activating Mastercard secure code within that module. However, there are some instances where questions are outside the realm of Mia, or instances where perhaps Harry wants to talk to an actual advisor or associate. He can ask Mia, I would love to talk to an advisor or an associate about this issue. Mia says, absolutely. Here is a really simple way to just click on that icon and connect you with an associate. And lastly, right here is an example of our implementation of a feedback loop. So this is an alert that does occur within some applications asking, hey, can you take this quick survey? We would love your feedback. This allows Mia to improve, so it's a constant maintenance and improvement within this application. This is also an example of what a fraud alert may look like. So Mia uses data science and algorithms to detect anomalies within data. These anomalies can be quantified as fraud alerts. So this would be what a fraud alert notification would look like. Now, Mia sounds pretty cool, but obviously artificial intelligence may be kind of a touchy subject for some consumers. So Ryan's gonna go off and talk about some of the ethical implications of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, so those were some really cool tools that we can go into, and before we actually decide to implement those for your guys' company, we want to go over some things first that are some concerns that might come up, beginning with the ethical implications. So first of all, we wanted to talk about the human workforce, because part of the culture that we're in right now is there's a really big need for a human element. There was an article published by the Wharton School of Business where they were talking about how traditional automation systems didn't really work as well for these kinds of processes, and they couldn't handle complex issues, which ended up frustrating consumers, and they didn't really get what they wanted, as well as they didn't really have a simple way to get contact with like a customer representative. And then another part of it is that when it comes to the human representation, it's always kind of necessary, because there's a lot of people that when it comes to these complex issues, they would prefer to talk to somebody on the phone. There was an article published by the Harvard Business Review that when a customer is able to talk to somebody on the phone, they're 10 to 15 times more likely to continue to do business with that company. And that whole ethical implication is handled by Mia, because Mia has both the capability to connect you to a representative, but also because of the way that the AI is structured, it can handle more complex issues, and as it learns more, it can handle more and more complex issues. The other concern that comes up is with your employees. A lot of people, when they hear about the implementation of AI, they get really concerned about job and the workforce and how people are going to continue with that company. And that actually is kind of like a fear that's not necessarily true. Forbes published an article that says in the next couple of decades, AI is actually going to create more jobs than it gets rid of, about 17% more jobs. And so when it comes down to like the job aspect of it, when it comes to human relations, there's actually going to be more jobs created because of it, and there just might have to be like a redistribution of where the people are in the company. And then the other thing that we wanted to talk about too is the privacy of the clients, because recently, because of all the scandals and like breaches in data, it's really important that your clients feel safe giving you that kind of information, and that's where the tokenization and all the other safety features come in, because the only people that will really have access to the data is the AI system and whatever comes into the AI system. So really human contact with that information is minimized, so breaches of that data is also minimized. And also the way that tokenization works means that the merchants won't be able to have that information either. So really all of your data is stored safely within the AI, and there's, unless, well, there really isn't any other way. That's kind of it. The only way that it works is that the AI gets the information, so there's really no way to like sell or use their information in illegal ways that they wouldn't like, so you can keep your clients feeling safe with your products. And then the other thing that we wanted to talk about too was the short-term and long-term evaluations. So for short-term evaluation, again, we kind of cover this a little bit, but we can really efficiently work a lot better, because the way that it works now is instead of going directly to a customer representative, you can save a lot of time by just going to the AI. And if you feel like you want to talk to a customer representative, they're still there, but you can solve simpler problems and even more complex problems quicker with the AI, which kind of adds efficiency to your company as well, because that means that your customer representatives aren't handling smaller issues that can be handled simply by something else. They're handling the more complex issues, which saves a lot of time. The only concern really is the potential retraining and displacement of jobs, which I want to talk about again later, but I kind of see this as a benefit for your guys' company. So let's go to a long-term evaluation for now, where there's supposed to be a massive growth in AI in the coming years. One of the predictions is by 2035, there's supposed to be a 40% increase in productivity in companies that use AI. So we want to get onto that as soon as possible so we can get that amount of productivity. So installing that AI systems will also help us a lot with the fact that, yes, we will be replacing some of the jobs, but they will be working on the human resources that we have. We can reallocate to more advanced topics, which will, in the end of the day, really benefit the company a lot more than if they stay on the day-to-day basis kind of operations. And that helps your guys' company in the sense that you can focus on bigger picture issues, and it also helps the consumer because they can get to their things easier, and your employees are happy too because your employees are going to start getting paid higher because their jobs are going to be more important. And then the last thing that we wanted to cover is briefly we wanted to talk about the finances a little bit in very big picture terms, because we understand that you guys kind of already figured out the bottom line kind of stuff, so we wanted to tell you like the additional benefits kind of financially of why you want to implement this. And so we compared we used the 5 or the 6 factors that we decided to show that, like, so for employee engagement, for example, because your employees don't have to be so engaged on the little day-to-day things, they save a lot of time. And as like the saying goes, time equals money. So obviously you want to save as much time as possible. That's the same with the RAB and speed to market. At first with this product, while it's learning, it might be a little bit slower, but it'll learn a lot quicker than most people believe that it will. And it will actually, over time, Mastercard will still keep its competitive advantage on speed of transactions, but at the same time also have the security that a lot of people are now wanting. So a lot of time gets saved that way if you guys start with this product now. And then there's the redirection of the resources as well with the VCA and the scalability. All has to do with the fact, again, of what I covered recently, was that the company can start redirecting its resources because you guys won't have to deal with the day-to-day tasks, and instead you can focus on the bigger picture stuff. And the one that I really wanted to talk about and cover again was the direct money saved, because we understand that there's a lot of costs to implementing such a system. For example, the monetary value of $6 million is a lot of money, if you think about it. But if you think about it bigger picture, just one single fraud event can cost upwards of $10 million. And so if a $6 million program can in any way minimize that opportunity or that from happening, then it would be great. And then that's like only a slightly bigger picture, but it can get way more expensive. That's the global aspect of it. But anyways, to continue the global aspect is my colleague, DK.
So since MasterCard operates in 210 different countries, we wanted to look at what other markets there are. And we found out that 85% of global retail transactions are still used in cash. So this presents a really good opportunity for Mastercard to use credit in these kind of markets, especially the Asia Pacific market and Africa, where mobile payments are expanding. So we feel that Mastercard has a really good chance of capturing the market that is still currently used by only cash-based transactions. And then for our AA automation adoption timeline, so because this is a big project, we wanted to scale it out to 5 years. So with the planning phase of it, we're planning on taking 6 months and just figuring out, is this the right solution for your company? Are we gonna go through and make sure that this solution covers all the bases to make sure that your customers are making their fraud cases easy and efficient? And we're gonna do this through analysis and making sure that we're on budget and we're within an efficient timescale, which is gonna take about a year. And then with the design phase is designing the process of the workflow and making sure that everybody's on the same page in implementing this new change. And then with testing and integration, we're going to use different testing environments to make sure our machine learning and MIA are suitable for market and making sure that all the kinks are worked out so when customers do use it, it saves time and money without having to continuously debug it. And so we're planning on launching at the end of Q4 of year 3. And then as we talked about that global expansion, using those 210 different countries and expanding on the market that is still using cash-based transactions, as well as creating a continuous feedback loop of continuous maintenance to make sure our machine learning is improving every time we use it. And so just in review, we went through the 4 types of automation and we chose intelligent automation because through the payments value chain.
That concludes time. Questions can start now.
Okay, good job, guys. I have a question. Maybe I didn't understand this, but so you're suggesting creating this MIA app. So how is that actually different than, well, I guess a couple questions. So everybody has to have the app in order to use this technology?
So above all, what we're suggesting is integrating the intelligent automation. The intelligent automation is on the back end for your companies to implement. One part of that takes form in MIA. And so the added bonus of having this sort of technology is now it's more accessible for your consumers to access fraud technology and mitigate those questions that your associates may have about how to prevent all this information because it can be stored within MIA's capabilities.
Okay. So I'm sorry, your name. You talked a lot about how people get frustrated when they don't have a human element.
Yes.
And so this gets away from that. So I feel like that was a little contradictory.
Yeah, we designed MIA to kind of embody as much of a human element as AI possibly can, which is why we have her face and her voice talking as well. It's kind of like a Siri kind of component, but within the app. So there's always going to be that issue of technology is going to go towards like not face-to-face interactions, but this is our best way of integrating customers that are used to talking face-to-face to a different changing technology where that's probably not going to be feasible much longer. So this is a good way to kind of bridge that gap of what technology is going forward to right now. So we understand that concern, which is why we wanted a really, really simple way to talk to associates. And hopefully by using MIA, people will be more comfortable asking technology their questions that they used to ask people in face-to-face.
And just to clarify, what I was talking about was traditional methods, which are very binary. And so like an example of a situation that happens sometimes is they'll ask really complex questions like, for example, did my check go through? Mm-hmm. And the binaries don't necessarily have an answer to that question. And so it'll just kind of like run a loop that doesn't really give any information and it never really connects them to anyone that can help them with that. And so this is a format where it's like, if they wanted to immediately talk to somebody, they have that ability. And even then, they also have the ability to just solve really simple problems with this. And then discussing the future of it, there's a trend, I can't exactly remember the statistic right now, but there's a trend where more people are feeling more comfortable talking to, because I know, at least for me personally, sometimes it's like easier to just Google something than to call somebody up. And so there's a growing trend in the younger generations that they don't even want to like really talk to somebody, they just want to be able to go to something like this. And so this way we kind of like start the implementation, and then once that generation starts to become the main consumer, we can like integrate more of that into our business plan, or your business plan.
One of the biggest challenges in the world of fraud is the delicacy, if you will, of the communication of fraud when it occurs to the end consumer. Do you envision this solution being that avenue, or continuity to the consumer to convey that message in those situations, as well as the asking of, so you have a need, you ask Mia a question, but will Mia also be responsible for
So for
notification?
identity theft or fraud alerts, Mia is honestly just supplementary to the AI solution, as you'd say. So these alerts can go through Mia, as shown in that slide. However, the main method of alerting is still email, and it should still be email because that's the most traditional way and the best and most efficient way, especially as a business person. I'm checking my email multiple times a day. That's where I get my most sensitive information and all my bank statements or anything like that. So email is still gonna be our primary method of communication. Mia is just a kind of an added bonus for customers to maybe use the app a little bit more or be more familiar with this kind of technology. However, when it comes to threats, that's a very serious issue. Maybe some sort of, hey, did you purchase this last night with over $500? Wow, that's a lot. Maybe something that might be what Mia says, but she won't be the one that says, hey, I'm sorry, your identity has been stolen. It's more serious than that, so that won't be used within this module.
One more question, sorry.
Go ahead.
You answered 90% of my questions with your opening statement, and that was awesome. How do you envision, how will you report on or measure future loss compared to the $6 million that it will cost to implement the solution?
So I think with looking at the case, they mentioned that with the rules-based, traditional rules-based integration, how it's very binary. And if you need to change a rule, there's so much cost lost in just changing the rule. So I think with our machine learning algorithm, it's going to take a lot of time to learn that data and build upon itself. But we're mitigating future losses because there's less rule changes, because it's constantly adapting to the consumer and their data and their purchases. So I think, and we kind of mentioned how like the cost of implementation, while $6 million does seem like a lot, when you look at it in the global scope of fraud payments, it's actually very little. So kind of an upfront cost to save money in the future is how we're going to kind of balance that.
I just had one other question about thinking generationally. Do you know what's the average age of your customer? I'm thinking about like my mother, or, and you know, I'm older than you. I mean, I'm very adept at using apps, but again, I'm curious if you've considered that as you think about utilizing this sort of technology.
So this is actually answered by Mia. So for people, I know my dad uses Wells Fargo or some other apps. He has a really hard time figuring out how to get through things.
Right.
Mia is your way of solving a solution. So even a simple question like, how do I check my statements? Mia can answer that. And it's really difficult because my dad will come to me 24/7 asking me questions. I was like, just Google it. But that even is a lot of work too, because you have to go through hundreds of articles. Mia is our way of introducing a new technology to an older generation.
And how will you implement that in different languages and cultures?
So that's an aspect that we're still working on as well. So that's why that is going to be implemented after our launch at, I think it was the end of year 3. So after that launch, then we're going to expand globally. Maybe pull up the slide. We're going to expand globally. And it's interesting because the Mastercard For You app actually doesn't even have United States as an option for the country. So obviously our main concern would be having English as one language, but implementing other languages is our top most priority, especially since the app honestly caters more towards a wide range and international focus. I think it has, about like 20 different countries that you can select from just from the home screen of the app. So we want to reach the broadest consumer base as possible because I think, as Daniel mentioned, there's a statistic about 80% of transactions are still done with checks and cash, but this is globally, not the US. That's a great opportunity for us. So having our app obviously have different languages, different capabilities, and then tailoring the machine learning towards cultures as well. So there's a lot to learn from different cultures, and hopefully having that global perspective will make AI efficient in general.
And speaking specifically from the Asian market, I'd just like to point out that they are very familiar with mobile pay apps already and that concept. And so to introduce an AI system such as Mia to help with that assistance could even further push your company to the forefront in those markets.
Great job with the presentation. You guys did a fantastic job. Besides, I really like the MIA and the acronym, and who did the slides with the,
Thank you.
looked fantastic. If you look at the timeline, though, I'm sorry, go back to the, I want to stay there for a moment. With the approach that you've outlined this morning, with the approach that you've outlined here this morning, we don't see any benefit coming from this until you're into implementation, which is 3 years out. A lot of investment, a lot of time. And when you talk about the adoption of new technology such as automation here, it's changing, if not every 6 months, every couple of months. Had you considered a different approach that would allow us to realize some of the benefits of your solution in a shorter time frame?
Yeah.
Because this would be too long, I can tell you.
I think especially with the global expansion, we could beta test different markets. So to make sure, like, we can, instead of rolling it out to the entire US, maybe we beta test a small, maybe for example, St. Louis, the St. Louis area, the St.
Yeah.
Louis customers, beta test our product with MIA, with the machine learning at a small scale, rather than rolling it out. So we kind of work out the kinks while we're getting to this launch phase and kind of like real world customers. So rather than, it seems like 3 years is a long time, but if we're constantly beta testing with actual customers and figuring out their habits, their wants, and their needs, our final product, when we get to year 3, will be fully fleshed out and will be ready for market.
And just to add on, so as you can see, this is pretty much the software development lifecycle, quantified. And I think there's a statistic that 2/3 of information systems projects fail. That's because they're over budget, or they're not on time, or they just don't meet the core requirements. That's why our analysis phase is so large, is because this is the most important part for companies to analyze. Is this right for us? Is this on budget? So it does seem a little bit long, but in order to have a successful project, and even with the fraud rules being noted, I think one mistake was so costly. We have to make sure this is perfect, because this is using such sensitive data, and this is an avenue of, technology that people aren't as comfortable with. So we want to make sure it's done right.
All right, that concludes question time.
Good job.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you so much.
Ryan,
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.